All right, welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're digging into something really interesting. We're looking at what really makes startups succeed, specifically in the crowdfunding space. Most people think, and I've thought this too, that it's all about the big things, like having tons of cash or amazing connections or just years and years of experience.
Exactly. That's the standard playbook, isn't it? You need the money, the network, the stellar CV. But there's some fascinating new research popping up that really challenges that whole idea. It hints that something much simpler, something we often just overlook, might be the real decider for crowdfunding success. And that's attention.
Attention. Wow, okay. That almost sounds too easy. Are we saying it could boil down to something that straightforward? So our mission today in this deep dive is to really unpack that, to explore why focused attention could actually be the most powerful and honestly the most accessible tool for entrepreneurs. Whether you're just starting out or have been at it for a while. Okay, so let's just restate that conventional thinking for a second. When you picture a startup getting traction, especially somewhere super competitive like crowdfunding, your mind jumps to how much funding do they have? How brilliant is their tech? Who do they know, right? It always seems to come back to what resources you have.
And that's exactly the assumption that Professor Luke Rhee at UC Irvine, along with Joon Mahn Lee and Dalee Yoon, questioned. Their paper, it's called Founders' Entry Strategy and Funding Performance in the Crowdfunding Industry, the mediating role of founders' attention. It basically suggests that, yeah, resources and skills matter, obviously, but maybe a lot of the research before missed something simple. Even if founders have all that great stuff, they might not actually use it effectively unless they're actively, paying attention. So it shifts the whole focus. It's less about what's in the founder's toolbox.
And more about what they actually do with those tools.
Precisely.
Right. Okay, so if attention is this crucial thing, how do they even study it? I mean, it sounds so abstract. You can't just measure attention with a ruler, can you?
That's the clever part of their study. They did a really rigorous empirical analysis. They used a ton of data from Kickstarter, a big crowdfunding site, looked at thousands of campaigns, successful ones, unsuccessful ones. They gathered really detailed info on the founders. And then they put these founders into 3 different buckets based on how committed they were professionally.
Okay, 3 buckets. What were they? How do they split them up?
Yeah, good question. So first you had the full-time entrepreneurs. These are the folks doing nothing else, just laser focused on the campaign. Then there were the hybrid entrepreneurs. They had a day job, but were running the campaign on the side, part-time. And the third group was portfolio entrepreneurs. These guys were juggling another business while launching this new campaign.
Okay, that makes sense. Different levels of, potential distraction.
Exactly. And to make sure this was accurate, they didn't just take the founder's word for it. They actually cross-referenced Kickstarter profiles with LinkedIn data.
Wow, okay. Thorough.
Very. And critically, they controlled for all those other factors we usually think of. Education, past successes, whether they had a co-founder or a team. After statistically accounting for all that usual stuff, they asked, what else explains why some campaigns did better than others? And the answer that kept coming up, attention.
So once you've got these categories and you've kind of leveled the playing field by controlling for background and team, how do you measure attention? What does that actually look like on Kickstarter? What were they tracking?
They looked for concrete actions, tangible things, like how many project updates did the founder post? How often did they jump into the comments and respond to questions or feedback from potential backers? Did they include videos in their campaign presentation? Things like that. Real signs of active engagement.
Okay, so visible effort.
Visible effort, sustained attention, exactly. And the results were pretty clear-cut. Full-time entrepreneurs, the most focused group, performed the best. Hybrid founders came in second. And the portfolio entrepreneurs, the ones juggling the most, they performed the worst on average. But the really striking thing was why. The data showed that the more a founder posted updates, answered comments, basically stayed present and engaged, the more likely they were to hit their funding goal. And this wasn't just a small effect, it was significant, regardless of their background or experience level.
So it wasn't just about having a good idea, it was about actively nurturing it online.
You got it. It's like, are you just putting something out there and hoping, or are you actively tending the garden?
That's powerful on its own. But I remember reading there was another layer to this, something called the weather effect. That seemed like a really clever way to show that attention wasn't just correlated, but actually caused the better results. Tell us about that.
Yeah, that was a really smart piece of the analysis. To tackle that causation question, does attention lead to funding? Or do maybe successful projects just get more attention? They used weather.
Weather. How does that work?
Okay, so they looked at the weather data for where each founder was located during their campaign, specifically rainy or cloudy days. Professor Rhee pointed out there's existing psychology research suggesting that, kind of counterintuitively, bad weather can sometimes make people buckle down and be more productive indoors.
Huh. Interesting.
Right. So the researchers hypothesized and found that on cloudier days, founders seem to dedicate a bit more attention to their online campaigns, maybe because they weren't out doing other things. And critically, this extra attention on cloudy days then predicted better funding outcomes. By using weather as this external factor that influences attention but not directly funding, they could isolate the effect and argue pretty convincingly that, yes, attention causes better performance.
Wow. That's really clever. Using cloudy days to prove a point about startup funding.
It's a neat trick methodologically, really strengthens their conclusion.
Okay, this is genuinely empowering. So let's bring it back to you, the listener, especially if you're an aspiring entrepreneur, maybe feeling like you don't have the right background or enough cash. What's the big takeaway here? What does this mean for you?
I think the most powerful message, and Professor Rhee emphasized this, is that you can make a real difference in your funding chances just by changing how you manage your attention. You don't necessarily need more money or a fancier degree first. You can improve performance by simply focusing more deliberately on engaging with your campaign and potential backers.
So it puts some control back in the founder's hands.
Absolutely. It's a message of hope, really, especially if you feel like you're lacking those traditional advantages. Rhee used a great analogy. He said, think about YouTube or Instagram. When we post often, people react to it.
Right.
You see the engagement. He said, in the same way on Kickstarter, when founders post updates and stay engaged, people see that energy and they respond with interest and support.
That makes so much sense. People back people, not just ideas. They want to see that commitment.
Exactly. It's about showing up, staying present, actively connecting. It suggests success isn't just reserved for the folks with the biggest bank accounts or the most polished resumes. It's also for those who dedicate their focus. As Rhee put it, quite simply, as long as you pay attention, the results will come.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of echoes that old saying, 80% of success is just showing up. This research puts some real data behind that idea.
So, wrapping up the core insight,
Mm-hmm.
yes, resources matter, experience helps, no doubt, but focused, consistent attention, that's a powerful, maybe even essential ingredient for crowdfunding success, and it's something you can control.
And maybe think about this beyond just crowdfunding, too. For you listening, where else in your life, maybe in your job or a personal project, could you unlock something new just by shifting where you put your focus, by paying more deliberate attention? It's a question worth asking, I think.
A great final thought. Where are you currently holding back your attention, and what might happen? What could you achieve if you decided to fully commit it?